There have been a record high number of cases of STDs in the United States, according to the CDC, in 2016. Yikes. In 2016, Americans were infected with more than 2 million new cases of gonorrhea, syphilis, and chlamydia, the highest number of these sexually transmitted diseases ever reported. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention said Tuesday. The agency's annual sexually transmitted disease surveillance report shows that more than 1.6 million of the new cases were from chlamydia, and then 470,000 were from gonorrhea, and nearly 28,000 cases were for primary and secondary syphilis, the most infectious stages of the disease, according to the CDC. While all of these can be cured by antibiotics, many people go undiagnosed and untreated. Going on from that, I know it's bleak. It gets worse, Anna, I promise. The CDC estimates there are more than 20 million new cases of STDs in the United States each year. At least half occur in young people ages 15 to 24. So David Harvey, the executive director of the National Coalition of STD Directors, has said this is very preventable and he knows exactly what's going on. This is what he says. Several factors are fueling the STD epidemic. Funding cutbacks for prevention, education, and healthcare programs, an ongoing debate about sex education for young people, I know, with cutbacks in that arena, particularly from this administration, and the rise of social media dating apps have all contributed to the rise. Another reason that they cite is the lack of symptoms for these diseases and a failure of practitioners to educate their patients on what to look for. There is a lot that is troubling here. I want to get y'all's reaction, but for me, I was very troubled by the fact that there are some practitioners who might not have the time or the resources or to educate their patients on what they need to look for. You go to get healthcare, you expect healthcare.
Right, I mean, yes, that worries me. But I think what's even more important is that young people get the education that they need to prevent this. And so if you focus primarily on abstinence-only education, where you don't allow teachers or particular schools to teach about, birth control or STD prevention, well then guess what's gonna happen? STD rates are gonna shoot up. Teen pregnancies will increase. And my favorite case study that I love to bring up whenever this type of debate happens is the comparison of Mississippi versus New Hampshire when it comes to teen pregnancies. Teen pregnancies are very high in Mississippi because they only allow abstinence-only sex education, whereas in New Hampshire, which is a state that has one of the lowest rates in teen pregnancy, they only allow comprehensive sex ed, where they say, you should probably avoid having casual sex and you should probably wait as long as possible. But in case you don't, let us give you the information necessary to protect yourself. Now, that not only prevents unwanted pregnancies, it also prevents the spread of STDs.
Well, and some of these, like syphilis in the 1940s, was considered a disease of the past. So how we have regressed as a nation is very alarming. And I absolutely agree with you. And I think that the way that you combat ignorance and outbreaks like this is through education, and there should be comprehensive sex education in the United States.
Oh, I totally agree. By the way, one other thing, I know that this study didn't mention HPV, but did you guys know that men carry HPV and you can't diagnose it in men? And by the way, it could have some devastating ramifications for men. There have been cases of penile cancer and throat cancer and stuff like that. So it's like really, really bad when you can't diagnose it ahead of time and treat it. But then also, if you don't diagnose it in men and they're going off having unprotected sex with women, they're spreading it to women, and guess what? You can diagnose it in women and it could lead to cervical cancer. So it's just, there's a lot of issues with this story, and it's devastating.
Ask your doctor about the HPV vaccine for yourself, for your kids. Way to go, chlamydia. What an underdog story for chlamydia to be in the background. People forgot about it, and now 1.6 million new cases. Hats off to chlamydia. And you know why people get chlamydia? It's because they take their hats off, put a Jimmy hat on it, wear a rubber, don't get chlamydia. Silent killer. Syphilis, I will say, it was eradicated in 1940s, essentially. We moved past it. No, make America great again. Let's get back to the days of syphilis or chlamydia or whichever one that applied to.
Awful.
Also,
What's wrong with
another
that?
thing that they address here that I think is important is reducing the stigma surrounding STDs and having conversations about sexually transmitted diseases and making that more accessible and people more open to engaging and talking about healthcare, even healthcare that might make you feel uncomfortable to talk about. It is so important. We need to erase that.
Did you have
stigma.
STD sex education in school?
Well, you know that I went to school in Belgium.
Yeah,
right?
that's what I mean. Is in Belgium. We're both from the Valley. We're
no, we did. We had our sex ed was very comprehensive at my school, and it was a Christian school, a small Christian school in Waterloo, Belgium. So good for them because it definitely could have swung the other way. Like a small Christian international school, it could have been run by nuns.
Yeah.
Could have been the other way, but it was very comprehensive. Almost too much so. I love Nurse Rollins. I still remember her because we were very familiar with how they have to clean a penis if things go wrong in that way. And
clean a penis?
And now I'm gay, so yep.
I remember I went to a Catholic school and we had sex ed classes, and I remember everyone got we had an assignment where we had to do a report, a poster with facts on each STD, and I remember the one for herpes, which was herpes HSV2, which was a little herpes virus with eyes that said a little conversation bubble, and it went, "I latch onto your genitals and I never go away." So I remember that. And it scared me away from sex for way longer than cool people get scared away from sex.
That was a little bit of misinformation. Like that, I mean, herpes can't be cured, but like that.
You can never it's an incurable disease.
It's an incurable disease, right?
Yeah, you can have a flare up that disappears.
Don't
get me wrong, Anna, I know about it.
Anyway, look, this hasn't been
Don't laugh at me, that's a stigma. That's the stigma.
I was laughing at your made a joke.
Okay,
yeah, I was laughing at your joke.
Funny man.
Just very quickly, I just wanted to mention, this hasn't been investigated, but what I'm curious to see is whether or not the heroin epidemic might play a role in the spread of STDs as well, because sexually transmitted diseases don't necessarily have to be transmitted sexually, right? So who knows? I'd really like to see a study into that as well.
If you like the Young Turks, you'll love Young Turks membership. TYTnetwork.com/join.